without further ado, the reason why we're on this call today, aside from the every Thursday call, is Ed Jones has a strategy that he's been working on having a lot of success with that he kind of wants to share with everybody. And then we'll do some Q&A after he's done. So be prepared to kind of pay attention and be ready to ask any questions. He's here for you guys.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Jonathan. My name is Ed Jones. Just a little background about me. I was born and raised in Queens, New York. I ended up moving to the Boston area. When I went to college, I went to MIT. I was trained as an engineer. Instead of going the corporate route, I decided to go into business for myself. So here I am, a young 20-something year old starting an IT company. So I've been actually in IT since, and it's been over 25, 30 years now providing IT support to businesses in the Boston area. Over the last 5 years or so, I wanted to start doing something different. I had been in computers and systems for quite a long time. So what really caught my attention, and it's still my passion today, is real estate. So about 5 years ago, I started a real estate business. I started looking around to try to find out what to do with it. Met up with a couple of those coaches, those coaches on the internet that just sort of try to say, hey, we can teach you how to make lots of money on the real estate. And I got up under a couple of them, but no, no go, no go, no go, until about 2023, when I ran into Pace Morby. And when I got up under Pace and I listened to the system and I learned about SubTo and all of those types of things, things completely changed for me. It went from just trying to make things happen to actually making things happen. So within the first year and a half, I was able to start getting properties under SubTo. I ended up doing a flip. One was in Maine, and making a lot of progress. And thinking that I was going to be doing all right. I got some rentals, but there was still something not quite there, because with my rentals, I still had to deal with fixes, and something breaks, and then all of my profit for the year disappearing. And if anybody here has had done the buy and hold thing, you know what it's like to get that call and go, I got to put more money into this thing. So I was going along thinking that that was pretty much it, along with all the other types of things. But then I ran into this thing called slow flipping. In a nutshell, what slow flipping is, as opposed to traditional flipping, is buying properties typically for cash or using PML cash, and then reselling it using seller finance and on an installment sale. So just like you finance a car. So if you go and buy a car, you go to the dealership, they have financing. You typically make it over 5 years, you make your payments, and then once your payments are all done or you refinance the car, they send you the title. Now, that's what slow flipping is in a nutshell. You just do that same thing for a house. And instead of 5 years, do it for 30 years. And one of the key part of slow flipping is that you don't have to do the repairs on the house. Let me repeat that again for those that are sort of half listening. You don't have to do any repairs. So typically what I do is I look for homes that I can purchase as is, that are livable, that are just like mildly or significantly distressed, but always livable. And another component of this, I found great success in the Midwest. So in the Midwest, there are states where you can actually buy sub $50,000 properties. I know that sounds incredible, and especially in 2025, but if some of us can remember back in the 90s and the 80s, you remember those prices that were just like that you would die for right now in order to buy? That's still happening in the Midwest. The reason being is again, you have manufacturing from many of those areas that just picked up and left decades ago. And because of that, all of the housing prices have pretty much stayed static throughout that entire time. So you can get houses that are definitely livable for $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, sometimes even less than that. And what I'm going to show you today is a couple of slide decks. I'm going to give you a couple of real examples of deals that I purchased for less than $40,000. And you're thinking, what kind of house you can buy for less than $40,000? I'll go through a couple of examples that will probably blow your mind. So let's jump right into it. If I can, do I have the ability to share my screen here?
Request permission and I'll grant it.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to send a request.
Done.
All right, and I am going to share my screen. And let me know if you're able to see my screen here.
Good.
Are we good?
We are good.
All right, so this is the slide deck that I'm going to show today. I'm using this. This is one of the ones that we use for private money lenders, just explaining just the overall idea of slow flips and it hits into some of the main points that a private money lender may be interested in learning about slow flips. And it also will have and answer a lot of questions that you may have as an investor. So with the slow flips that I'm doing in the Midwest, I can get a PML lender 12 to 15% on their investment. And again, typically these investments are somewhere between 30 to 50K for those types of investments. Now, the only difference here is that because the price is so low, instead of going into a deal and coming right back out again, what I can typically do is pay off the lender completely within 5 years. So I'm looking for a particular type of lender typically to partner with me on this deal. Those lenders that are just interested in just completely passive money, just what they call mailbox money, every month, somewhere between the tune of 12 to 15%.
So you're paying them their interest monthly.
I'm paying them not just interest, it's principal and interest.
Oh, okay, nice.
So I'm
So
paying
are
off their
you
loan.
amortizing? Is your payment schedule like you're amortizing them by
Yeah,
paying them back
a
little by little?
totally payment, yeah, total amortized over 5 years.
Beautiful.
So just a quick example. So for a $30,000 loan, I'll pay them 40K over 5 years.
Nice.
So for someone who just wants to park some piece of their money into a real estate deal, that's something that, again, over 5 years, they'll just start getting checks every month. So let's go
Love
back
it.
to talking about slow flips. Again, slow flips are a real estate strategy where we purchase low-cost homes for cash and resell them on installment contracts to end buyers. Here's the price range, 20 to 50K, resold with financing to responsible buyers. It creates that 5 years, a 60-month income stream at higher interest. Again, that's more than what you're going to get in the stock market, and it's secured by real estate. It creates a stable, consistent payback from secured agreements. Slow flips offer a unique blend of financial return and social value. Now, with this is a brand new asset class. This is not something that typically people are looking at. Those low-cost homes in the Midwest stay that way typically because the ARVs are very, very low. So flippers or those that are trying to get into those types of deals, they look at the max value that could come out of that property and it's still sub 100. So they just say, I can't do anything with it. But if you look at it from the standpoint of an investor who knows slow flips, it's a cash flow play because the true value of those houses is not in the actual real estate. It's in that installment contract. So with those installment contracts, and I'll show you an example, a couple of examples shortly, you can get over 30% cash on cash return for these houses consistently. Say that again. 30% cash on cash return for houses that are in typically mildly distressed to moderately distressed condition. Basically, how you get that kind of return is that you market it to buyers who normally are renters, who normally wouldn't qualify for a regular bank loan. And because the price is so low, you can work out financing deals using those contracts that would be totally in line with what they currently pay for rent. And again, once I go into some of these examples, you'll see the specifics of how that works. So that also then gives the benefit of going into some areas that people aren't normally investing in, and it allows you to build up those areas through community development, especially if you're doing these numbers and volumes. Okay, so here are the key parts of why we use private money. Again, many of you are doing investment deals right now. You know the value of private money as opposed to institutional money. Private money lenders gives you more flexible terms, as well as being able to get into involve some deals where the lenders may not want to do because the prices are so low. Specifically with something like this, DSCR, typically the minimum DSCR investment is about 75K. So for properties that are less than 50, it makes it really tough to get into some of those markets. But a private money lender, someone who may just have, again, that capital sitting around in a low-performing bank account, or I've heard of people putting their money into CDs and things like that, like at a couple of percent, something like this would be awesome. So here, again, we buy those Midwest properties for cash, resell on contract for deed, and generate monthly income. So here's an example of what I was just talking about a moment ago. PML at 30K, 60 months, 12% APR will get you 667 a month in the mail every month on the first. Total return 40K. Now it's secured by a promissory note and a recorded mortgage. So this is a recorded use, like a regular mortgage that you would have on a property. You become the bank. So you would be the bank of Colin or the bank of Jonathan in this deal, where you finance it just like that. You also have the ability to look at the property before the money is invested. So you can actually look at the property, run comps at it, say, okay, if I'm going to put 30K on it, I want to know that I could get at least 30K back out if this deal goes sideways. So you have the opportunity to review it before getting into any kind of deal. PMLs have purse position. Now, that's not something that typically PMLs get. Usually there's a first position DSCR loan or some sort of a hard money loan where PMLs are coming in at second, maybe even third position. These, because of the prices are so low, you're the only debt on the property. So you're in the driver's seat if something doesn't happen the way it's supposed to. And the slow flip model was started by an individual. His name is Scott Jelnick. He started it like 8-9 years ago. He started a community that's very suspiciously much like SubTo, where you have a community of people doing similar types of things. But I'm kind of favored with the SubTo community, although I participate with Scott Jelnick's group as well. And as I mentioned before, it creates that 60-month of cash flow. Let's go into an actual example. This is a property that I purchased in Centralia, Illinois. Centralia, Illinois is in the southern part of Illinois. Okay, this actually was this is a 5-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 1,300 square foot property. It's on a double lot. It has a 2-car garage. It even has a pool. The seller wanted only $30,000 for it. And deals like this are extremely common in that particular area. So within a week of me purchasing it for 30K, I brought a PML on that deal. I was able to resell it to a renter for $79,000. Why? Because of the terms. $3,000 down, $875 a month. Totally affordable for a renter. So for the renter, with their family, they came in, they started cleaning out the place. Basically, all of the major things were fine. The roof had actually been redone within the last couple of years, so that was fine. No major issues in the basement, the foundation. So it was a single mom with 5 kids, where she was able to come in, qualify under our program. She had a state job, stable income, was able to walk right into this deal, and now she has a place to have all of her kids, where before she was living with her mom, all of them squeezed into a tiny house. Another example, and I'm going to go through these examples, and then I'm going to take some initial questions and then get into a little bit more detail into some of the deals. This is another property that we just purchased last month. It was for 50K. That included the closing costs. We resold it for 119. Actually, this wasn't quite right. We sold it for 109, $109,000 with $5,000 down, not $4. We adjusted the price before actually selling it. So this is a little outdated. We sold it for $5,000 down and $1,225 per month. The buyer in this case was a Section 8 investor. And that's also another demographic that we can sell to. Section 8 investors will look at a property like this and they'll say, hey, look, I can turn it around and make it a Section 8 rental. And rentals for him in that area was going between $1,600 to $1,800 a month. So to be able to walk into a property, and this property, again, was actually in pretty good condition. So there was only some minor stuff that needed to happen in the bathroom. Once he was able to do that, he can turn it around as a Section 8 investor and resell it with cash flow. And for him, walking into a deal where he doesn't have to actually find financing and buy, other than the financing that we have, $5,000 a down, $1,225 a month, was great for him. So this one, we also brought a PML in for 50K. So the PML is receiving 12% annually. Their payment is $1,100 and $1,112 per month for 60 months. So their payout over the 60 months is going to be $66,000. So for a PML, again, that's not too shabby for someone who's looking just for a long-term cash flow off of a deal. And that was done. We bought it and funded it in August, and we resold it to the Section 8 investor last month, September. Number three, and I'm going to go through this in a little bit quicker, we purchased it for about 40K. We resold it for 99.5. Now, you would think that looking at this, how in the world can you sell this property without at least fixing the fascia damage? You can see everyone sees the fascia damage right off the top. The seller left their trash in, they left beds, they left, even food in the kitchen. I kid you not, I did not even clean out the old food in the kitchen and was able to sell this property for the 99.5. Why? Because the buyer wanted to be able to own a house. So they walked in with a vision for a house and they said, hey, look, this is my opportunity at home ownership. I never would have had this as an opportunity. So we provided that opportunity for them at $3,000 down. And this deal, I think we included not only the principal and interest, we included the taxes and insurance. Total price for them was $1,070 a month. Now, point out here, 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms in that main house. And then there was a 1 bedroom, 1 bath garage apartment that was recently done. I think it was within the last 4 years. So that was in great condition. For $1,070 a month, $3,000 down. And that particular one we did just straight cash. So if someone's interested in investing in something like this, we have a consistent cash flow. We can do that and offer, I think for this one, we're going to offer slightly higher, 15% return. So if somebody has 35K and they want to earn 15% annually, give me a call and we can have a conversation. And this one, pretty much the same numbers. I won't take the time going through this one as well. But this was another one in East St. Louis, Illinois. Bought it for 42, resold it for 119. Buyers paying like $900 a month over 30 years. This one is also available for PML investment, 35K at 14%. All right, I'm going to take a moment just to break here. Any immediate questions?
I got one.
Sure.
How are you finding the buyers?
The buyers can be anywhere that you can find renters. So the bigger demographic is going to be people who are going to be renting. So you can go to Facebook Marketplace, you can go to Zillow, some of those other places, and just post an ad, rent to own. So instead of people renting, hey, for the price that you're going to pay to rent, how about having a property that you can come in, customize it, fix it up a bit yourself, put in a little sweat equity, and own it. So
And
for
if
a
they
lot
don't
of those,
pay,
what's that?
if they don't pay you, you go through foreclosure just like a regular bank.
Yeah, so what in this particular case, actually, there's even a greater benefit in several of the states that we are dealing with. When they default, and I'll get onto a slide that has some more detail on that that point later, but I might as well address it now. If they don't pay in default under the contract that you have, because it's an installment sale in these particular states, they can be treated as renters. So you don't have to go through a full foreclosure as you would in many other states, including Massachusetts and many other New England states. So in these places, instead of it being like 9 months or more in a foreclosure process, typically here you're talking like 3 or 4 months max. And again, with some screening and looking at what people can afford, these are highly affordable types of properties. So does that answer your question?
I got a question for
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep, Tony?
Thank you for this info. It's awesome. Could you explain to everybody a little bit more in detail as well? You had said your private money lender would be typically in first position here, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So when you're selling to an end buyer, can you explain a little bit to everybody what a contract for deed actually would look like?
Sure. So a contract for deed basically is an installment sale. Has anybody ever put like financing on a car? You go into the dealership and you finance the car? Remember that long contract that you had to sign and all the places that you had to initial, put in the details, the truth in lending
Mhm.
statements, the amortization table, the terms, what happens if you default, all of that type of stuff. That's what typically goes into one of these contracts. And with that contract, you do not have title, or the buyer does not have title until they fulfill the terms of the contract. So that's why, again, when you're doing one of these installment sales on a car, once you pay it off or refinance, that's when the title shows up in the mail. Anybody had that experience? You finally pay off a car and then they send you the title?
Yep. Comes in the mail, you're right.
Yep. So same thing here. So as long as they hold a title, technically, they own the car.
Mhm.
But
So,
you as a car buyer, you consider it your car. You drive it, you do anything to it, you can change the color, you can do all of the stuff. It's your car for all practical purposes.
Hey, baby, pizza.
So
so
same thing apply- Go ahead.
essentially
Mhm.
what you're saying, Ed, too, is so just so everyone's on the same page. So, like, basically, everybody signs a contract like you normally would, and the only difference is you're not recording those documents. Everybody, each party, just gets their own copies, and they just kind of hang on to those until that mortgage is fulfilled. Correct?
Actually, it's a little bit more than that. You're not actually recording the contract, but what you are, and that's a very important distinction, Tony. I'm glad you brought that up. In the states that I'm dealing with, there are 3 separate documents that need to be signed. First is the document that has the installment agreement. Now, as Tony mentioned, you don't take the installment agreement and go down to the recorder's office and record the entire agreement. But what you do is that you use the second document. The second document is a memorandum of the agreement. And in layman's terms, what that means is that it's just a document that says there exists a contract in which the buyer now has interest in this particular property through an installment sale. And that document does get recorded. So that
There we go. So if somebody did want to try to sell it underneath you, at least that's recorded so that they can't just sell it.
Right. So as a buyer, I'd want to know, hey, look, how do I know that you're just not going to go and sell it twice? So the recorded document is the memo agreement, which then gets recorded to the county. And again, by law, that we're required to record those memos, at least have a notation somewhere that says, okay, this buyer has interest in this property. Okay. Now, I did say that there was 3 documents now. So the third document, though, just for our protection, we also get them at the time of the closing to sign what's called a special warranty. Now, basically what that does is that allows us to be able to say if they were to default, not pay, disappear, what have you, given the terms of this contract, they would then release that first memorandum. So we, in advance, get them to sign off. That allows us to be able to then, if they don't pay, we can file that third document. And again, for the purpose of those that are more advanced, you probably understand what I mean. So that, again, they don't pay, we can go and then file that document, and then we can go through a regular eviction process. So that we would then be free to then go and just resell it to the next buyer once they're evicted or they leave the property. Okay.
And if that was the case, that sounds like with your initial down payment too, you'd probably recoup most of those costs, correct?
Sure. I mean, it depends on how long the actual eviction process will take. Typically, we hold that down payment as like that's basically just as a reserve to pay for an eviction if it ever happened.
Right. Awesome. Thank you for
So
clarifying that, because that makes a lot of sense. Sometimes it's easier when you explain step by step, so it's easier to see what's going on, you know?
Absolutely. All right. Any other questions before I continue?
I do have one.
Sure.
This isn't so far removed from a lease option then, is it?
Well, it's different in the sense that the buyer actually has they're started the process of actually buying the house. So you're getting it, they're getting it from you. So that's different from a lease option in the sense that a lease option, I can pay that lease, but if I don't exercise that option, everything that I put in there is lost.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lease option down in South Carolina,
Mhm.
but along the same idea, they gave us, I think, $10,000 or $15,000 down, and are making, you know, our mortgage on the house is $1,600 a month, and they're paying $1,900 a month.
Yep.
And then the deal was they were going to pay us back. Well, our thing was they were supposed to pay us back within 3 years, and they said we're going to try to pay you back in 2 years.
Okay.
So it's one of those things where, I mean, and this won't happen. We're in the middle of an eviction process right now. So, but anyway, it just sounds to me like it's kind of like a lease option, but with longer terms.
Yeah. So again, so unless that buyer ends up finding the financing to
Oh, yeah.
actually to buy it within that time frame, then they have to then re-up once the lease option period is over.
Exactly.
Versus,
Yeah.
so versus this, their payment is the same for the full 30. They have their
Mhm.
finance. There is no need to go and find some other financing. This is the financing.
True enough.
You know, and as far as the seller, in this case, you know, the investor, number one, if you brought a PML into the deal, your first part of that 5 years is just about, you know, break even, maybe slightly break even. But within that 5 years, after that 5 years is over, the house is paid off. That's totally free and clear.
Yeah.
So for the next 25 years, if you have the same buyer, you
Your
have
mailbox
income
money.
coming in
Yeah.
and no
Yeah. This
responsibility as
luckily
far
was
as
a
repairing.
SubTo.
What's that?
This was a SubTo. We got
Yeah.
it at, I think, I don't know, 3.7.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, it's also possible to do a slow flip under a SubTo, but the numbers really have to
well,
work in there for you to be able to do it.
yeah. Well, that's good to know. Thank you so much.
All right, you're welcome. All right, so let me go through a few more of these slides here. Again, awesome social impact here, provides affordable housing. One thing I can point out, co-living is doing awesome, great work all across this country. People are doing great, but just note that co-living only works for singles or couples, because no one's going to want to have their kids in a house where there potentially could be strangers. You
We
know,
have a
another
co-living
thing,
as well.
yep. So RV parks, that's also another thing that's doing tremendous around this country. You know, that can offer some really opportunities for people to be able to live relatively inexpensively. But in certain areas of the country, there's not as many RV parks. So that's an option that only goes so far. Another thing that I think Pace is talking about right now is tiny homes. That also can open up some great opportunities on existing properties. And similar financing models, I think, might work for tiny homes, as long as you can work out the whole part about what the state that it's located in and a foreclosure versus an eviction. But you may have something where you can have a tiny home sub 100,000 that might give somebody an opportunity to be able to walk in with them relatively inexpensive financing. All right, but this particular option creates pathways for home ownership for renters. So they are not a lease option person. They're not a renter. They are an owner for all practical purposes, in the same way that you are an owner when you purchase a car. And when done on scale, this can really change some neighborhoods, because there are a lot of places where, again, B or C, C or D level neighborhoods, where there's a lot of people who live there, but largely it's not being renovated, it's not being brought up to speed. But if you bring more home ownership into those areas, people will fix up their homes, as opposed to the landlords that are just renting it out and people are not really caring for their properties.
Ed, could you do a favor and just slide back to example number 2 that was before this?
Okay.
So I'm a slow learner, but I think I'm getting it. So essentially, you purchased this property for $50,000. You had a private money lender at
Mhm.
$50,000, 12%, but this was not an interest-only payment. This was principal and interest, so you paid it down over 5 years, correct?
Okay, just started this, so I'm going to pay it down over 5 years, correct? The
Okay,
principal and
so
interest payment is the 1112.
is the 1112.
Yep,
Okay, so that's the actual monthly payment to the private money investor until it's paid off in 5 years.
correct.
And then you're selling it to, just say the buyer, regardless that he was a landlord, for 119.5.
Okay, so again, the number's not quite right. I sold it for 109,
Okay, that's fine. So you sold it for
$5,000 down.
109.
Yep,
You might as well just call it 110. So it's a $60,000 profit, let's just say hypothetically,
okay,
right? So it's 60,000. You're gonna slowly get that 60,000 over the course of the 30 years since you gave him a 30-year mortgage.
correct. Yes. So that's
Okay.
from day one, I have $60,000 of equity in this property.
And then you've calculated an interest rate in that amount. So after the
Absolutely.
5 years, you're actually a banker and you're making interest also on that, because when you do the
Correct.
math, I think I did
Yep.
1230 times 360 months. That's a hell of a lot of money. I think it was like 400,000, wasn't it?
Correct. Yes, that's the hidden benefit as well. That's how much money I'm making on a property that I brought a PML in for 50K. I'm making over $400,000, or I'm collecting over $400,000 in payment.
Right. So that, but most likely that will get refinanced within 30 years, so you'll probably get paid out, right?
Again, it depends on the investor, because if the investor likes his terms, if he doesn't have better terms anywhere else, he's going to keep it.
But
I'm
that's
thinking
a,
that this one might be refinanced because the interest rate is really high.
yeah.
With being an investor, there's no limit on the amount of the interest that he can pay.
So
And on
since you're paying
still,
12% for the first 60 months, what was the interest rate? You know, not that it's always that one. What did you set a rate for him on that?
I think it was over 13%.
Wow.
For your buyer, your end buyer.
Yeah. Because he has to cover the 12% during the monthly payment.
Well, not necessarily. It doesn't quite work that way because of the spread difference over the number of years. Many of the deals that I'm doing, I'm charging like a homeowner less than 12. So
Okay.
I can do 11. And one deal I did as low as like 9.
Okay.
It really can depend because again, over 30 years, what I'm paying, what that person is paying, because there's so much interest and so much in time involved, that interest is going to be really high.
Mm,
So the actual monthly dollars, and I'll get into some of the actual breakdowns with the numbers, and you can see this a lot more closely of comparing what they're paying and what I'm paying the PML.
gotcha.
But I always structure these so that the PML is getting paid. Well, the monthly payment from the buyer is more than covering the PML payments.
Right. I also noticed, so I just Googled that town because I've obviously never heard of it.
Mhm.
And I was happy to see that it was not in a very rural area. It's right next to St. Louis, Missouri.
Yes.
Now you're specific, I mean, you can literally walk to St. Louis from that town,
Mhm. Right.
which was great because that means there's an economic center there. Are
Yep.
you specifically targeting that and making sure you're not in very rural areas?
That is a great question. Typically, as a part of the criteria in which I buy, it has to be within 30 to 40 minutes of a town that has at least 50,000 people.
That's great.
Because there are some really rural areas where, yeah, you can buy a property and it can be as low as $10,000, but if you have no one to sell it to,
Right.
it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So you need to have something where it's a decent town where there's a reasonable renter base, in which you know that if you put it out there, you're going to get a renter to raise their hand and say, "I want to buy that."
Hmm. Very
So for
interesting.
the cities that we're dealing with in Illinois, it's always within 30 to 40 minutes of at least some city or some area that we know that is reasonably populated that we can get renters from.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Okay. All right. So frequently asked questions. Are my loans really in first position? Absolutely. Again, no need for any other debt because of the prices that we typically go. For lending, can I use self-directed IRAs? Absolutely. The PMLs that are involved right now, they use their self-directed IRA, self-directed 401k. So again, what typically what people will do is, I mean, you have a bigger retirement and just take a piece of it and say, hey, look, I may have $200,000, but I may want to just get 30 at a higher percent. You know, and it's not big a deal, but yeah, but if you connect it to something like this, you can get a much higher return. Use attorneys for legal documents, absolutely. Now, Illinois is not an attorney state, so we normally use title companies with attorneys associated with it. And the documents are crafted by attorneys. You can review all the documents before signing. You can review the property. You can talk to the title company that's handling the transaction. So again, no question marks throughout any of this process. You can look at exactly what's going on before any of your money goes out of your bank account. What happens if the end buyer defaults? We talked about that. The property title stays with the investor. And we would go through the eviction processes if necessary. Sometimes people will just take cash for keys. They can't afford it. We can take cash for keys and they're out. Sometimes just the thought of, okay, I'm going to be evicted, will get them out. But worst case, you take them through the eviction process. Max is 4 months. Sometimes it's less. How are the properties selected? The properties that we're selecting are always livable. We don't want to buy something that immediately the buyer has to do a bunch of stuff in order to make it livable. The only exception is that if we get a price that's just so low, you know, that's not something that we would offer to PMLs, but we would do this ourselves. Just put cash into a deal. Let's say, for example, one of the properties that I purchased, I had a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom property in Flint, Michigan that someone offered to me for $15K. 1,600 square feet on a double lot. And I was like, okay, I think I can take a little bit of risk here on 15K. And that one I turned around and I just resold that for $63,000. $2,000 down, $675 a month to a young couple where the husband is a contractor. So they want to build out their home. Never had an opportunity in home ownership. Smoking deal for them, $2,000 down, $675, and they can do all the work themselves. Love it. So we were able to get someone into their property. But generally, the properties that we're offering for PMLs are always livable. No major issues, no roof or foundation or mechanical stuff, or stuff that would take a while to fix. No electrical issues throughout the house or major plumbing stuff. We normally get them well below market. If we pay cash, we can get it at a discount. So there'll be some spread as far as the actual as-is value. So you can, again, as a PML, you can always look at that. How do we qualify buyers? They have to show pay stubs. You know, you have to show that this, total household income is 33% or less of your overall income. Otherwise, again, it's not really affordable to you. You can't be paying half or more of your household income towards your housing payment, because that quickly will show that they are upside down. We also check to see if they've done consistent on-time housing payment at least over the 12 months. Because usually if someone is going to run afoul, they run afoul quickly. See sample notes and mortgages as a PML. Absolutely. You get to review all documents. How do you get started? You can contact me or reach out to me. You can use my QR code if you want to just get my contact information. You can take a quick picture of that. All right, and I'm also going to jump into a couple of other quick examples here, more detailed breakdowns. Okay, so this is one of the ones that we got a PML for. This is the 30K PML investment. We purchased this home, Centralia, Illinois, $30,000, contract for deed. So the buyer in this particular case is paying 11.24% interest rate over 30 years at $895 a month. And that includes the taxes and our admin fees. So for the first 5 years on that 30K, and this is information there for Steve, we're paying a lender back at 12%, which is in this case only $667 a month. So small spread every month, about 120 a month. We're not looking to make bank on it for those first 5 years. It's just maintain it. And maintain
And
it
then
is all we have to do there to maintain it is make sure they pay. And pay
after
our
5 years, then you're going to be grossing, call it $900 a month.
Yeah.
That's all going towards you. Okay, beautiful.
Yeah, so it's actually 788 because the taxes still have to be paid.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, gross. Got it.
Yeah, so think about all the rentals that you may have that may net less than $700 a month.
Yeah. So when we talk to you in 2030, you're going to be raking in some nice cash flow.
Yes, sir. All passive.
I think
Love it.
that's got a big thing to keep in mind here too is you're gonna have $780, $88 a month with having $0 into a deal from the beginning.
Correct.
So that's pretty crazy.
This is awesome. I'm so happy for you.
Yep. Thank you.
This is amazing. Love
Yep.
it.
Absolutely.
My other question for you would be, why is it so advantageous for the end buyer to do this with you at such a high interest rate? Are you seeing that most of the end buyers are self-employed contractors, stuff like that, and they just wouldn't get a typical loan? Or would you say it's more of a down payment thing?
Yeah, it's a down payment and a monthly payment issue. I mean, because again, think about, and again, there's a lot of renters that just don't qualify. They try to go to get a bank loan. You don't even have to be a contractor. You can have great income, but banks will disqualify you for all kinds of reasons. You know, your debt to income is too high or what have you. You know, you don't have enough history at your current employment. I mean, you have other responsibilities, but again, you'll make your housing payment before you'll make anything else. So
Yeah.
here's a way for you to relatively easily qualify and walk into a house.
It's genius because if you think about it, I mean, let alone I didn't do my taxes for the year yet. Still, I know it's embarrassing, but I wouldn't be able to go qualify for a house because I didn't do my taxes yet. You know what I mean? So there's so many good people out there that can afford a house, but maybe just they can't qualify the traditional way.
Exactly.
Yeah, what I love about this too, Ed, is Pace obviously is doing creative title. What is it? Creative title now, right? Where is it creative title? Is that where he's selling the deals on the website there? Is that
It's creative listing. It's called creative listing.
creative listing, right? Yeah, so creative listing, obviously, that's doing the same thing that you're doing here. It's solving the problem of all these people who may make good money, but they can't get approved for loans.
Absolutely. And again, and I haven't really even tapped into this because I've been able to find largely buyers from the rental community. You know, if we accelerate this, there are Section 8 investors who may want to be very interested in this. Hey, I don't have to go and get DSCR money again. I don't have to have somebody check my credit again. I don't have to go through all of that again. All I have to show is just, hey, I've made consistent income and, you know, paid my own bills on time. Sure.
Hey, Ed, I have a question real quick.
Sure.
So, these are houses I joined a little bit late. So these are houses you're purchasing, fixing up, and then doing all of that, or just any type of deal, like wraps and stuff?
No, this is a little bit different in the sense, actually, that I'm purchasing the houses for cash and not doing any of the repairs.
Okay.
So slow flipping, the reason why it's called slow flip is that you make your money more over time.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than a traditional flip where it's like you go in, you fix it immediately, and then you try to resell it immediately.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I don't do any repairs. So the house that you're looking at right there,
Mm-hmm.
it was a seller. Who was the seller? The seller was his wife died. So he had another house. He moved out of this house to a smaller house. It was just too much house for him by himself. So he got a smaller house and then he kept it for a while. He tried to rent it. That didn't work out. He put it on the market. It didn't sell. He was trying to do a for sale by owner. So I was able to walk right into this deal. He had repaired the roof and just maintained the house in general, but it had a lot of stuff in there that needed to be cleaned up, cleaned out. The yard was a mess, especially the other lot. It was like a jungle.
Was it worse than Porter?
It was worse than Porter in terms of the yard. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So there was a lot of stuff that needed to be done to the house. However, again, for him, it's like 30K and I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
So we then found a buyer. Actually, the buyer found this house for us, then, which is a crazy story. I'll
That
just
is crazy.
mention this.
Wow.
We were showing a buyer another house, that other house with the faster damage I was showing folks late earlier, and they weren't interested in that house. But then they ran across this one and say, "Hey, look, there's a couple of blocks over. There's another house. I want to buy that. Why don't you buy it and then resell it to me?"
Nice. Make
That's
your life
awesome.
easier.
Yeah. So we walked
Love
in,
it.
looked and said, "Okay, this looks great. 30K is all you want. We can definitely resell it." And we sold it to that same buyer. So we had a buyer for this before we even purchased it. Signed the
And do you,
contracts within a week and it was done.
That's the
and
best when that happens. I love that.
Yeah.
do you form an LLC for each individual property?
No. So there are two different entities that we typically use for purchases. One is just a typical LLC. For these prices of houses, our liability for the house and all of that is relatively small. Asset levels are $300,000. No, 30 to $50,000. Having separate LLCs for the liability of $30 to $50,000 is not a lot. So generally, just for the costs and the things associated with it, I have a number of properties under, I guess, what is it, 7 different properties right now in the last 6 months, and they're distributed across 3 different LLCs.
Okay, and then you get the insurance policy per property,
Absolutely, 100%.
and it's under you. When the I don't know how it works in this state, but when the landlord does the Section 8,
Hmm.
I have done Section 8 before, and I had to prove ownership. How do you do that? Because you're truly the owner on that. If he's going to do the Section 8 renting, do you know?
I'm not sure right off. And again, he could show some of the documents that shows that he has an installment sale.
Yeah.
So he's in the process of buying it. So that would allow him to be able to insure it, because he has that interest in the property itself.
Okay.
And as
Just
far as the
curious.
insurance, regardless whether or not they get insurance, and we always encourage them to have their own insurance. But if we have a PML in the deal, we will insure it ourselves just to secure the PML money.
Yeah.
So there'll never be a situation where the buyer doesn't pay the insurance,
Yeah.
and then something happens, and then they get disqualified, and then PML's out of money. We put insurance on it ourselves,
On the
so
insurance,
that's kept current.
so it's impossible to rebuild this house for $30,000 or whatever.
Correct.
So what do they do for that? How do they calculate it? Hey, it's going to be 200,000 for a rebuild or something like that?
Yeah, so for these low cost houses, all we're interested in is making sure that we secure our investment. So on
Okay.
something like this, we have like a cash value of $79,000. That's the cash value of the contract.
Okay.
And that's all we insure it for.
Gotcha.
So if God forbid it burns down, we get that $79,000. We pay off the PML. We have money in our pocket. We'll probably give something to help the buyer as well. But we also encourage the buyer to have their own rental insurance, or renter's insurance, so that they can insure all of their belongings.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all we're looking to do to cover it. And then, after we get our cash value, we'll just sell the lot and just move on.
Yeah.
But we're not looking
But
to rebuild these properties. No, not
Right.
because
No.
you're right. It will cost a couple $100,000 to rebuild it.
Yeah. At the very least, you're covering your debts. You're never going to leave your private money lenders and yourself without in a position where the debt's not covered if there's no more house.
Absolutely. 100%. Okay. All right. So for people who like numbers, here's the actual full breakdown of the different numbers. Okay, so we bought it for 30K. The slow flip sale price was 79. Buyer down payment was 3. The loan principal to buyer 76. Their monthly payment was 895. The term was 30 years, 11.24%. Was their interest rate. Taxes 107. Admin fee 50. Net after taxes 787. From the investor side, investor metrics, I can get the word out.
Struggling there, Ed.
At 12%, 5 years, 60 months. And during that first 5 year, the lender repayment period, those are the numbers there. We covered those already. And our spread again for those first so many months, it's just 120 a month. Annual net 1442. But after repayment, this is after the house is paid off and we own it free and clear, no payments to the lender. Monthly net to America One would be 787. Annual net to America One is 9,400 thereabouts. And the cash on cash return, the equivalent cash on cash return, as if we would have bought the cash, would be 35%. You know, and a number of these properties we did buy for cash and are getting that kind of return. And we won't do a deal if we get less than 25% cash on cash return. But your typical one is over 30%. So this is a very lucrative investment strategy for houses. And you've seen the quality and the shapes of these houses. You would never think that you can make that kind of, you know, cash on these kinds of houses, but you really can. It's just simple math. People will rent at that level. And if you're only buying the house at like 30, 40K or 50K, then you get these kinds of returns. Okay, and if you do want to get more information on some of the deals, you can scan right here. Or if you can go to the link there, you can get into www.a1-pp.com/slow-flipping. I can send you, or I'll get you into my Go High level and we'll send you new deals as they come up.
Hey, Ed, do you ever offer your PMLs equity in the deals as well, or are you just doing interest?
Think about it for a moment. That we've thought about that. The only way that we would do equity in these types of deals is that if it was at quantity. Because as it is right now, our break-even number is like 100 something a month until the 5 years are being paid off. So on individual deals, it doesn't really make sense because we're not making any money, and then we'd have to cut a percentage on the end. So unless we're talking like funding for like a quantity of houses, minimum like 20, 25, we really can't do it, because if we're doing quantity, then we can build into our model money for us to make some money on the back end and through on the front end, and through that first repayment period, we can absolutely cut in a private money lender into a deal. So one of the things that we are going to be doing fundraising for in the coming month is we have a pilot that we want to do in this area to do 30 of these at once. 30 at a time, including some administration fees that will help us to sort of work out the whole deal at 37K. So 30 at 37K, that's 1.1. That's going to be our raise next month, where we're looking for one or several investors for the very first one, just to get the motor running. And then we'll follow it up with additional fractional raises for those, again, quantity. On the back end for those deals, we're offering like 30%. And that's 30% of the 25 years if you want to just have it run. Or you have an option, because that's a steady stream of income, you can sell that position as either as a note or something equivalent, which will get you a pretty good return right there after that repayment period. And our initial estimates are going to put it at somewhere around an IRR of 28%, I remember. Yes. So for someone who wants to get into some kind of a deal where you're doing quantity with us, we can get you an IRR. And IRR in simple terms basically is just what would your rate of return would be as if you would to put it into any other kind of investment that's just returning over however many years that are in there. So the IRR would be the equivalent of a cash flow of 28% if you step into one of these deals at that rate. So long answer for a short question. Yes, we can offer equity in these deals, but we want to be, partners at a higher scale. Otherwise, again, we're dividing up very small pieces of the pie. for
I
these
love it.
individuals.
Sounds good. Sounds like in 2035, I'm gonna put in my calendar right now to call you and see how pretty you're sitting.
Now another thing that I do I'm also offering is if somebody wants to get into this kind of investing and delve deeply in it, more than happy to walk with someone through that process. So we could potentially partner on a deal with the understanding that you will at least fund one deal and then learn the whole process. And then point you through to a second deal and then show you how to do it.
That's awesome.
So again, with something like that, then it becomes something that balances out because, hey, look, if you invest in one of our deals, we can then turn around and show you step by step. Okay, here's how we source. Here's how we do it. Here are the contracts that go along with it. Here are all the caveats. And then take it through a complete sale and then say, okay, look, you have more cash to invest a second time, plug you in. Okay, let's find the deal for you. Let's show you how to put the offer in, get it, find buyers, walk you through the entire process.
And so we have some newbies in the Zoom tonight too. If for anybody who's focusing on bird dogging, would you have a buy box that somebody could bird dog these deals for you, or are you guys pretty good with lead flow?
Well, overall, deal flow is actually pretty good, but again, we're always interested in potential properties. Let me see if I had. Sure, let me just pull it up here. I can show you the buy box.
I think actually, oh, that's perfect. I'm gonna put the URL in the side chat because I know like Geo, I had been back and forth with Geo, and I think he was saying that he wanted a bird dog to kind of get involved and stuff. So that's super helpful to know what it is, and then if people are, a good point, Tony. If people are bird dogging, they know what to look
So
for.
typically, so this is the price range that we're looking for is up to 75 in cash, estimated as is value is the 80% of cost. Those are key things right there. As we talked about before, minimum 2 bedrooms, vacant a month to month, C class. Generally, we'd look at some D class neighborhoods if the price really has to be right. Those are the states that we're targeting right now. And it has to be within 30 to 45 minutes of a larger city. Because we can't go too rural because then we won't be able to resell it. Because there has to be a pretty steady source of buyers, if that makes sense. Okay, you have the link in the chat. So if you want to take a look at that, those are the kinds of properties that we are looking for in those particular cities. Or those particular states, I should say. Santiago, you have your hand up?
Yeah, Marcia and I actually had I wrote down some questions in my chat here. Marcia and I have a similar question. Where are you finding or sourcing these deals? Is it just Zillow.com? Like, where are you finding them?
That's a great question. You remember I mentioned that group I talked about earlier that's developed the whole thing? They have wholesalers there. So they have a ton of these properties. And and when I say a ton, I mean a ton of these properties. I was quite suspect when I first heard about this slow flip. $30,000 house, what does that look like? Oh, they're probably talking about a hut. It can't be more than a tent. They have tons of these properties that are for sale any given time. Especially right now when it's getting into the winter months where the inventories or the buyers of regular purchases start going down. And sellers want to really sell their property, so they're coming in at some really low numbers. So at any given time with these wholesalers that are in the group, there's at least 5 to 6 a week that are generally available. I know right now there's a glut of them. I think there's a good 20 to 30 properties that I could pull down right now.
Nice.
So there's no shortage of properties at all. It's just PML investment.
You touched on this a little bit earlier, but so these, sub 50K properties, what are you said C class, but are these like in terrible neighborhoods, even though they might be close to a bit major city, or are you kind of vetting for that as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's two schools of thought. First, yeah, you don't have to purchase in terrible neighborhoods. There are just places throughout Southern Illinois, Missouri, Ohio, Michigan, Indiana. Some people are investing in Kentucky, Tennessee, Louisiana. Some others are investing in Mississippi. And these aren't all terrible neighborhoods. For the large part, this works best when the prices are low.
Yeah.
There are other folks who are investing in other places like Virginia, where the prices aren't so low. But what they're doing is that they are taking sub-2 properties
Mhm.
and doing an installment style as opposed to doing a lease option, which is something that typically most of us would be the first thought that you would have if you're looking to sell or just collect money on. I know folks who are doing slow flips on them. They would raise the down payment, of course, because the price is a lot higher,
Mhm.
and do something along those lines. But once you've got it, then you can send it any way that you want. So it doesn't have to be only C or D class neighborhoods. Now, another thought to go along with that is that the real value, again, folks, is the contract. It's not the house. These may be neighborhoods that you or I would never want to live,
Mhm.
but people live there every day. People rent there every day. The real value is the contract. So whenever I'm looking at these houses, I'm not thinking of, okay, is this a house that's going to appreciate, or this is a house that's going to keep value? I'm thinking, is this a house that's what kind of contract can I get for this house? What kind of return based upon the condition of the house and the quality of everything involved, what can I get from it? So in those neighborhoods, we'll find out what the rental costs are, what are people paying, what's custom as far as the types of families that are there. Are there mostly like two and ones, or are people looking for bigger things, fours or threes or multiple bathrooms? So we'll adjust the pricing depending upon each one of those things. But now in these particular neighborhoods or even across cities, I have a pretty good sense of just looking at the house. Okay, that's going to go for about this. So that's my first thought before, okay, is it in the bad part of town? Because one of our most profitable flow flips right now is in one of the bad parts of town. And the buyer isn't a buyer as in a homestead buyer. It's actually an investor who's doing Section 8 stuff.
Nice.
So those are the kinds of things that go into that.
Have you had a default yet?
I've had some slow pays, no defaults yet. Now with the slow pays, if the payment is more than 5 days late, we charge a 10% late fee. And that's 10% of the entire payment. So if they're paying $1,000 a month, $100 if you're 5 days late, and a lot of these renters, they'll pay the $100 extra and just keep going.
Yeah, nobody wants to get evicted.
Now, as far as like having to actually default, I mean, I've had late payments. I got one of my things are late right now, but again, this is where you have to get into the discussions with the renters, where if they want to go through an eviction process, okay, well, we have their down payment set aside. We can walk through it if need be. And you have to hold them to task and say, hey, look, send out the late notices, do the things that you need to do. But if we have to go through it, we'll go through it. All right. Any other questions? All right. So would it be helpful to go through? I had another doc here for another example. I think we pretty much got the examples that I have already. Anything that needs further illustration?
Guys, this is your time. I know that Ed's already answered a bunch of questions, but if this is something that interests you, definitely get into the nitty gritty. He's here for you guys right now.
I just
Okay,
want to
so
say thanks to Ed for coming on and for just telling us all about this and being so open and really just offering your time and expertise. There's another person that I remember I came across right after I joined SubTo, and I contacted him because I thought this was such a good idea. And really what it turned out to be was, well, then come join my mentorship for another multiple tens of thousands, multiple chunk of money. And I said, look, I just spent a bunch of money on SubTo. I'm not going to start something new right now, but I thought it was a really good idea at the time. And I just really appreciate how you're sharing this with us. It's really good of you.
Absolutely.
yeah, because ultimately, I'm not thinking about, well, down the road, I might do a mentorship again, but right now it's at the stage of just raising awareness as this being a legitimate strategy. Because in the other group, again, people are gung-ho. There's over like 1,200 people in the group. They're running and gunning. So there's a lot of folks who are getting some traction over there. You have folks in there that have, there's this one guy who has over 250 of these, literally.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow.
Okay,
You know,
just one
another
more
guy.
quick question.
Sure.
I'm assuming that in the Midwest, are these landlord-friendly states?
Yes, they are. Largely,
Okay.
Missouri is more so than Illinois, believe it or not. In Missouri,
Oh,
it's a lot easier to evict someone under a contract for deed. So instead of
okay.
like going through 3 or 4 months, you can usually get somebody out in 45 days.
Wow. Yeah.
They don't,
I've heard I mean, I'm in Vermont and New Hampshire. New Hampshire is not as bad, but
Yeah.
Vermont is ridiculous to try to get tenants out.
Absolutely.
I had somebody that had 107 units
Mhm.
in Vermont, and his son is actually a closing attorney who does our fix and flips. And Steve, the father, who has all the units,
Yep.
said that he would go to an apartment that had not paid him in 6 months, and he'd knock on the door and say, "Hey, I need to, we need to get back in good graces, and I need to figure out what to do to, so catch you guys up." And he said, I could hear the dog bark and the TV was on, kids crying. They wouldn't answer the door. So I'd knock again and say, announce, I need to come in. We need to talk about this. We need to catch you up and figure out how to get you on a plan. And he said, and then I go to try my key and they change the locks on me. And he said,
Wow.
my son is a closing attorney and a lawyer, couldn't do anything for me. So
It
I just
Even
thought that,
so, here's the thing. Massachusetts is a very long process to evict. When I used to own my rental properties, I had to deal with an eviction, and it was like probably like a 6-month process.
oh boy.
Even in non-landlord friendly states,
Yeah.
as long as you go through the proper paperwork, they will eventually have to leave.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. But I think Vermont might have Massachusetts beat.
Probably.
I
I'm not arguing that. So,
I bet they do.
so
yeah.
we
Anyway,
we were at a property in Rhode Island once, and I think Rhode Island and Connecticut are fairly similar. But we actually had the cops called for other reasons and chatted with them after, and they said that if you go into if you're a landlord and go into a property that you own that that
they
renters
can
are
arrest
in,
you.
if they don't give you permission and if they are in there, then you are trespassing. It
Yes.
is considered their
I
property,
know,
and
right?
you are the one that goes to jail.
Exactly. That's
But I
hard.
think regardless, basically there are each state has its own rules, and you have to figure out how to play by those rules and what are the risks and rewards, right? Like some of these, what Santi's saying, I wouldn't take on a property in Massachusetts with the same cash flow that I would a property in, call it, Indiana, because my risk is too high. The risk reward doesn't pan out. But if your cash flow is high enough and you vet your tenants properly, I'm not saying it won't happen, but you hedge your bets on it. So basically, you take the rules of the game that the governments have set up, and you decide, do I want to play by these rules? And if I do, how do I leverage it to my advantage? And then if not, you can look elsewhere. But it's no matter where you look, there are benefits and drawbacks. and it's just picking out which ones you're willing to accept.
That's when it's helpful to have multi-unit, so if somebody decides not to pay, you've got other people paying that can offset the mortgage and anyway.
Yeah. And I think to that point, like, don't become house poor, no matter what. If you're buying your own house or if you're buying rentals, like, you don't want to spend your last penny on it and rely on this money coming in. You need a buffer so that you can withstand, if you know it's a 6-month process to evict, well, put away 6 months of whatever your holding costs are, so that, hey, this was a crappy situation, but I'm not in foreclosure.
Right.
I think something to note here too, like on all my long-term rentals, you should run your numbers with like a 5 to 6% vacancy savings every month, so that God forbid somebody does do this, at least, hopefully you have 6 months by that time, or 8 months, whatever it is, saved up, so that it's not coming out of your own pocket. You already have it saved.
Well, luckily, this guy had 107 units, but this was a standalone apartment, so there was nobody else paying it was a standalone apartment, so.
Yeah. Think of it too, like if you run a retail shop, right? If you run a retail shop, that you're going to lose a certain amount of inventory to theft. And no matter what you do, like, just some of it gets stolen. I was at Home Depot a couple of years ago, and some guy went running out with a bunch of DeWalt tools, and the manager came and like,
you have his number?
Tried to do something. No. But basically what it boiled down to was, he was like, yeah, I called the cops, but like, hey, unfortunately, we know that this is all factored into our pricing. I know X amount is going to be lost every year due to theft, and we can do whatever the heck we want, but that number ain't going anywhere. So we just got to factor that in as a cost of doing business. And so a similar thing here, you factor in your rent, you factor in whatever money you're putting aside to know, this stuff happens, and one property might become a dud for a year because I spent 6 months with a non-paying tenant that destroys the place. But you hedge it by having other properties. You hedge it by making sure that you put enough away, not taking all your profit and going on vacation and buying a new car, stuff like that.
The biggest
thing,
I want to reemphasize this. There is not a single investment on the face of this planet that is not without risk. Right? Where I could talk about all different types of investments, business investments, stock, but right now there's a real estate investment community, so I'll stick it to real estate. There is no real estate investment that has zero risk. If someone's telling you there's zero risk in any investment, you should probably walk away from that person and walk away from that investment, because no investment is without a certain risk, and you just need to, have that mentality going into any particular type of investment.
Exactly.
All right. Any other questions for Ed? I love what I'm seeing.
No, thank you.
All right, guys, in the chat, let's thank Ed for his time. Much appreciated, sir. I'm sure we'll have further conversations about this in the future for sure.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right.